Jungkook never said, "I love you," but he always chose to sit next to Jimin in every room, as if the world was only safe there in silent rooms and dangerous fame. Jungkook never says, "I love you," but always chooses Jimin, where safety feels like destiny. Jungkook's hand was shaking when the lights went out. Not the dramatic kind of blackout the staff rehearsed for, but a sudden, suffocating darkness that swallowed the arena whole and turned 20,000 screaming fans into one monstrous, disoriented roar. For a fraction of a second, the world disappeared. No stage, no members, no exit signs, only the metallic scent of overheated wires and the distant crash of something heavy collapsing backstage. Jimin, Jungkook's voice, cut through the dark before he could stop himself. There were other names he could have called. There were 5 other people he loved in different ways, but it was always that name that tore out of him first, instinctive as breathing. A hand found his wrist, small, warm, trembling. "I'm here," Jimin whispered, closer than he expected. Even in chaos, Jungkook moved. He shifted sideways, shoulder pressing against Jimin, placing himself between him and the direction of the falling noise. He didn't think about it. He never did. The world could fracture, stages could collapse, rumors could ignite like gasoline, but his body always chose the same direction. Toward Jimin. Security ushered them off stage in frantic waves of flashlight beams. The emergency generators flickered back to life, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Staff shouted into radios. Somewhere, a manager was swearing. Jungkook's heart didn't slow until they were in the narrow hallway behind the dressing rooms. Only then did he realize his fingers were still locked around Jimin's sleeve. He let go as if burned. "I didn't say I needed saving," Jimin murmured, but his voice was soft, almost fond. Jungkook shrugged, eyes dropping to the floor. "I know." He would never say the other thing, the dangerous thing, the thing that trembled beneath his ribs like a trapped animal. "I just need you close." They had been like this for years, gravity disguised as coincidence. In interviews, Jungkook always ended up in the seat beside Jimin. On flights, his headphones would somehow tangle with Jimin's blanket. In hotel rooms assigned randomly, he would linger by Jimin's door until someone suggested sharing space just for convenience. The world called it friendship, brotherhood, fan service. Jungkook called it survival. Because long before the blackout, before the arenas and awards and relentless cameras, there had been a different kind of darkness. Back then, Jungkook had been the quiet one with 2 big dreams and a fear of disappointing everyone. He carried expectations like invisible weights tied to his wrists. He smiled brightly on stage, but off stage he measured his worth in mistakes. One wrong note, one misstep, one comment online. Not good enough. Jimin had seen it first, not because Jungkook told him, he never did, but because Jimin watched in ways others didn't. He noticed the way Jungkook's jaw tightened after practice, the way he laughed a little too loudly when teased, the way he stayed up scrolling through comments he pretended not to care about. "You don't have to win everything," Jimin had said once, tossing a water bottle at him after rehearsal. "I'm not trying to win." "You are," Jimin replied gently. "You're trying to win against yourself." Jungkook hadn't answered because it was true. Jimin's own fears were quieter, sharper. He feared fading, being replaceable, being the one people praised for charm but not for talent. He practiced until his muscles burned, until mirrors blurred. He smiled through comparisons that sliced under his skin. They were both afraid of disappearing in different ways. So they sat next to each other. Not because it was romantic in the way headlines would twist it, not because it was calculated, but because when they were side by side, the noise dulled. After the blackout incident, rumors spread fast. Sabotage, electrical failure, an anti-fan breach. The company tightened security. Schedules became stricter. Managers started assigning seats in vans and planes to avoid unnecessary speculation. The first time Jungkook was told to sit elsewhere, he laughed as if it didn't matter. "Just for this trip," the manager insisted. Jimin was already by the window, hands folded in his lap, expression unreadable. Jungkook took the assigned seat across the aisle. It felt ridiculous, the way his chest tightened over something so small. He could see Jimin perfectly fine. They could still talk. Nothing had changed. Except everything had. Halfway through the flight, turbulence shook the plane violently. Oxygen masks didn't drop, but drinks spilled and passengers gasped. Jungkook's hand gripped the armrest automatically. Across the aisle, Jimin's knuckles were white. Without asking permission, Jungkook unbuckled and crossed over, ignoring the flight attendant's warning. He slid into the empty middle seat beside Jimin just as another jolt rattled the cabin. "You'll get in trouble," Jimin muttered. "Let them," Jungkook replied. Their shoulders touched. The shaking felt less violent. Jungkook stared ahead, pulse steadying. He would never say "I love you." The words felt too fragile, too exposed. Love could be quoted, screenshotted, dissected. Love could be used against them. But choosing a seat, choosing proximity, that was deniable. That was safe. The real threat didn't come from turbulence or blackouts. It came quietly through leaked photos and anonymous posts suggesting favoritism, tension, imbalance within the group. Articles speculated about rifts, about secret conflicts, about one member overshadowing another. The comments were worse. Jimin read more than he admitted. Jungkook pretended he read none. One night in a hotel room thick with the scent of rain through an open window, Jimin finally asked, "If it ever hurt the team, would you stop?" Jungkook didn't need clarification. He sat on the edge of the bed, fingers tracing invisible patterns on the blanket. "Stop what?" "Choosing me." The question hung heavy between them. Jungkook thought about the years, the shared glances before going on stage, the way Jimin's laugh could unknot a day of self-doubt, the silent understanding when interviews became overwhelming, the simple, grounding fact of a warm shoulder nearby. "I don't choose you to hurt anyone," Jungkook said slowly. "I choose you because when I don't, I can't breathe the same." Jimin's eyes shimmered, not with tears but with recognition. "I never asked you to protect me," Jimin whispered. "I know," Jungkook's voice softened. "I just don't know how not to." The conflict escalated when a senior executive suggested separating them during public appearances to balance the image. It was framed as strategy, professionalism, growth. Jungkook nodded during the meeting. Jimin smiled politely. That night, they walked alone on the rooftop of their dorm, city lights flickering like distant stars. The air smelled of asphalt and summer heat. "I don't want to be the reason you're criticized," Jimin said. "You're not. They say I rely on you." Jungkook turned sharply. "You don't. They say you hide behind me." A humorless laugh escaped him. "I don't." Silence stretched. Traffic hummed below. Jimin stepped closer, close enough that Jungkook could feel his breath in the humid air. "Then why," Jimin asked quietly, "do you always sit next to me?" The honest answer was terrifying. "Because when I was 16 and afraid of failing, you sat next to me first. Because when I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, you stood in front of it and made a joke until I laughed. Because you see the parts of me I'm scared of, and you don't look away." Instead, Jungkook said, "Because it feels right." It wasn't poetic, it wasn't a confession. But it was true. The climax didn't arrive with explosions or scandals. It came during their final concert of the tour, under a sky painted with fireworks and thousands of synchronized light sticks. The stage was steady, the power held, the world, for once, behaved. During the closing meant, each member spoke about the journey, about gratitude, about growth. When it was Jungkook's turn, he scanned the sea of faces, then let his gaze drift sideways. Jimin stood one person away. Assigned spacing. Jungkook stepped out of line. Not dramatically, not rebelliously, just one step. He closed the gap and took his usual place beside Jimin. A murmur rippled through the crowd, soft, knowing. Jungkook lifted the microphone. "I'm not very good with big words," he began, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "But there are people who make hard days feel less heavy, people who sit next to you when the lights go out." His hand brushed Jimin, brief but intentional. "I'm thankful for that." He didn't say, "I love you." He didn't need to. Because in every van, every waiting room, every chaotic backstage hallway, he kept choosing the seat beside Jimin. Not out of habit, not out of image, but out of a quiet, unwavering decision to stay where he felt most grounded. And Jimin, who had always feared fading, realized he never had to compete for space in Jungkook's world. He already occupied the safest part of it. The lights dimmed slowly as the concert ended, not in darkness, but in a warm, golden glow. This time, when the stage emptied and the noise softened into memory, Jungkook didn't reach blindly. He simply walked beside Jimin, shoulder to shoulder, no fear of blackout, no need for dramatic rescue. The world was loud, unpredictable, and often unkind. But in every room they entered, Jungkook still chose the seat next to Jimin. And that was the closest he would ever come to saying everything. The first thing Jungkook heard was glass shattering against the studio wall. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't clumsy hands or bad luck. The sound exploded sharp and deliberate, cutting through the rehearsal room like a gunshot. "Say it again," Jungkook's voice was low, dangerous in a way the public had never heard. Across the room, one of the senior producers stood rigid, jaw tight. "I said the choreography needs adjustment. The dynamic is too obvious. It's distracting." "Distracting," Jimin repeated, breath uneven but eyes steady. "From what?" "From the group," the producer snapped. "From the brand. You two standing together every formation, every ending pose, every interview. Fans are talking. Investors are talking. It's becoming a liability." The room smelled like sweat, overworked air conditioning, and something bitter, fear maybe. Jungkook stepped forward, "So fix the formation." "We are," the producer shot back. "You'll be center with someone else for the next comeback. No more default pairing. No more," he gestured vaguely between them, "this." Silence thickened. Jimin let out a slow breath. "You mean no more sitting next to each other?" "I mean no more feeding rumors." Jungkook's laugh was short and humorless. "Rumors about what?" The producer didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. The word hung unsaid, but heavy enough to suffocate. Jimin's throat worked as he swallowed. "You think proximity is a scandal?" "In this industry," the producer replied coldly, "perception is everything." Jungkook's hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles blanched white. He had endured criticism about vocals, dance, personality. He had swallowed accusations of arrogance, favoritism, ego. But this felt like someone trying to surgically remove something essential from his ribs. "You're asking us to pretend we're strangers," he said. "I'm asking you to act professionally." The argument escalated fast. "Professional," Jungkook's voice rose. "You think choosing a seat makes me unprofessional? I think choosing one person every time creates imbalance." "Then maybe the imbalance isn't us," Jungkook snapped. "Maybe it's the way you're looking at it." Jimin stepped in front of him, palm pressing lightly against Jungkook's chest. Not to silence him, just to ground him. "Stop," Jimin whispered, barely audible. But Jungkook wasn't looking at Jimin. His eyes were locked on the producer. "You want controversy? You're creating it." The producer's face hardened. "Be careful." "Or what?" Jungkook challenged. "Or the company will start making decisions without your input." The threat landed. Not loud, not dramatic. Just final. Later that night, the dorm felt colder than usual. The city lights outside flickered like restless thoughts. Jimin stood by the kitchen counter, fingers wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. "You shouldn't have pushed him," Jimin said quietly. Jungkook leaned against the opposite wall, jaw tense. "He shouldn't have talked about you like that." He wasn't talking about me. He was. Jimin finally looked up. His eyes were tired, but not weak. They're talking about us. Jungkook didn't answer. Do you know what they're saying online? Jimin continued, voice trembling despite his effort to steady it. That I manipulate you, that I cling to you for attention, that you've changed because of me. Let them talk, Jungkook muttered. It's not that simple. The outburst shocked them both. Jimin set the mug down too hard. It rattled against the counter. You think I don't see it? The comments, the edits, the slow-motion analysis of every time our knees touch. You think I don't know the pressure that puts on you? Jungkook's chest tightened. You think I care? I care, Jimin's voice cracked. I care because I don't want to be the reason you're cornered into something you never chose. The words struck deeper than any producer's warning. You think I didn't choose this? Jungkook asked, dangerously calm. I think you choose it without thinking, Jimin shot back. And one day you might wake up and realize you sacrificed parts of yourself just to make me comfortable. The accusation hung between them like smoke. Jungkook stepped closer, close enough that the air shifted. Do you really believe that? Jimin's silence was answer enough. The fight turned personal after that. Maybe you like being needed, Jimin said softly, almost cruelly. Maybe sitting next to me makes you feel strong. Jungkook flinched. And maybe, Jungkook replied, voice shaking now, you're pushing me away because you're scared it means more than you want to admit. The room went still. For a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. Jimin's eyes flashed. Don't. Don't what? Say it. Jungkook's laugh broke apart. I don't say anything, that's the problem, right? You don't say anything, Jimin repeated, anger giving way to something rower. You never say what this is, you just act like proximity is enough. Because words ruin things, Jungkook burst out. Words get twisted and weaponized, words become headlines. And silence doesn't, Jimin demanded. That shut him up. The truth was brutal. Silence had become its own kind of statement, a void people filled with speculation. Jimin's shoulders sagged. I don't need you to protect me from darkness anymore, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I need to know if you're choosing me because you want to or because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Jungkook felt something splinter inside him. He thought about the blackout, the turbulence, the meetings, the endless noise of fame pressing in from all sides. I don't know how to separate the two, he admitted finally. Jimin's breath hitched. The confession wasn't romantic, it wasn't triumphant, it was messy and uncertain and terrifyingly honest. The controversy erupted the next week anyway. A leaked rehearsal clip showed Jungkook abandoning his assigned position and crossing the stage to stand beside Jimin during a break. It lasted 3 seconds, 3 seconds of instinct. The internet detonated. Some fans defended them fiercely. Others accused them of favoritism, of disrespecting choreography, of creating unnecessary narrative tension within the group. Articles dissected body language frame by frame. The company called an emergency meeting. You need to address it, the executive said flatly. Address what? Jungkook replied. The perception. Jimin sat very still beside him, not touching, not even looking his way. Make a statement, the executive continued. Clarify that you are simply close friends. Emphasize the team dynamic. Put distance between the speculation and reality. Distance. The word felt surgical. Fine, Jungkook said suddenly. Jimin's head snapped toward him. I'll say something, Jungkook continued, ignoring the look. I'll say I choose where I stand because it makes me perform better, because I trust him, because when I'm next to him, I don't overthink every move. The executive frowned. That's not distancing. It's the truth. After the meeting, Jimin cornered him in the hallway. You're making it worse, Jimin hissed. I'm done pretending it's nothing, Jungkook replied. I'm not asking you to pretend. Then what are you asking? Jimin's composure finally cracked. I'm asking you to decide whether this is worth burning for. The question wasn't about seats anymore. It was about careers, reputation, the fragile ecosystem they had built over years of sacrifice. Jungkook stepped closer, voice low and trembling. If I stop choosing you to make other people comfortable, I won't recognize myself. Jimin's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. And if you keep choosing me without understanding why, you might lose yourself anyway. The tension between them became unbearable, stretching across rehearsals and interviews like a live wire. They stood apart when told to. They followed formations precisely. They avoided sitting side by side on camera. And it felt wrong, artificial, like amputating something invisible. The breaking point came during a live broadcast. A fan asked casually, "Why don't you sit together anymore?" The studio lights were blinding. The cameras zoomed in. Jimin opened his mouth to deliver the rehearsed answer. Jungkook cut him off. "We're still us," he said quietly. The room stilled. "We're not less close because we sit in different chairs," he continued, eyes flicking briefly to Jimin before facing the camera again. "But sometimes people think distance means something broke. It didn't." Jimin's heart pounded so loudly, he was sure the microphones would catch it. "And sometimes," Jungkook added, voice soft but firm, "choosing someone isn't about romance or scandal. It's about knowing where you feel steady." The silence afterward was deafening. No dramatic confession, no forbidden declaration. Just truth laid bare in a way that couldn't be twisted into spectacle. Back in the dressing room, Jimin stared at him. "You could have said less," Jimin murmured. "I could have," Jungkook agreed. "Why didn't you?" Jungkook hesitated. Then slowly, he crossed the room and sat down beside him. "Not touching, not dramatic. Just close. Because I'm tired of pretending safety is controversial," he said. Jimin looked at the small space between their hands on the couch cushion. For the first time, he didn't ask why Jungkook chose him. And Jungkook, though he still didn't say the words, understood that love didn't always need a declaration to be real. Sometimes it was enough to endure the noise. And still sit down beside the same person anyway. "I'm tired of being your safe place if you're too afraid to call it what it is." Jimin's voice didn't rise, but it sliced cleaner than any shout. The dressing room still smelled of hairspray and sweat from the live broadcast they had just finished, the faint buzz of stage lights cooling behind the walls. Jungkook froze halfway through pulling off his in-ear monitor. "Call what is?" Jimin let out a shaky breath, running a hand through his damp hair. "This, us, the way you look at me when you think no one's watching, the way you panic when I'm not next to you." "That's not." "Don't," Jimin cut in, "don't minimize it." The others had already left, sensing the tension like animals before a storm. The hallway outside echoed faintly with distant laughter, blissfully unaware of the earthquake building in this room. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "You think I'm using you? I think you're hiding behind me." The accusation struck deeper this time. Jungkook stepped closer, heartbeat loud in his ears. "Hiding from what?" "From yourself." Silence swallowed them whole. Jimin's eyes were glossy but defiant. "You never say you love me, you never say you don't. You just keep choosing me in every room like it's instinct, like it's survival. But I'm not a life raft, Jungkook." His name trembled in the air between them. Jungkook's voice dropped, rough around the edges. "You think I don't know that? Then why won't you define it?" "Because the moment I define it, they own it," Jungkook snapped, pointing vaguely toward the invisible world outside the walls. "They dissect it, turn it into headlines, reduce it to something cheap." "And what if I don't care anymore?" Jimin shot back. That stunned him. "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Jimin's laugh was brittle. "I've been careful for years. Careful how I sit, how I laugh, how I even breathe near you. And they still talk, they still speculate. So what exactly are we protecting? The question hit like a collision. Jungkook opened his mouth but found nothing ready. Only fear. Only the image of everything collapsing, careers, reputations, the fragile balance of the group. You're asking me to risk everything, he said finally. I'm asking you to be honest. The word honest felt heavier than love ever could. Before Jungkook could respond, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Jimin's phone lit up too. Both of them looked down at the same time. A new headline was already trending. A blurry photo taken backstage, Jungkook's hand at Jimin's waist, closer than necessary, taken from an angle that told a story louder than reality ever had. The caption was merciless. Secret relationship confirmed. Jimin's breath hitched. Jungkook felt heat rush through his veins. They're insane. The image wasn't even recent. It had been taken months ago during a chaotic encore when the stage was slippery and Jungkook had steadied Jimin so he wouldn't fall. But context didn't matter anymore. The door burst open without warning. Their manager stood there pale. We have a problem. No, Jungkook said flatly, holding up his phone. You have a problem. Within an hour, they were back in the conference room they had grown to resent. Executives spoke in low, urgent tones. Legal teams were dialing numbers. PR drafts flickered across tablet screens. You need to deny it immediately, one executive insisted. State clearly there is no romantic involvement. The phrasing felt clinical, sterile. Jimin's hands were folded in his lap, fingers trembling slightly. And if we do? The room went still. The executive's gaze sharpened. Then you risk endorsement withdrawals. Sponsorship contracts have morality clauses. Morality. As if proximity was immoral. Jungkook leaned back in his chair, eyes dark. So we lie. You clarify, the executive corrected. You want me to look into a camera and say there's nothing there. That would be advisable. Jungkook glanced at Jimin. For the first time, Jimin didn't look away. The air thickened with unspoken history, years of shared glances, silent comfort, suppressed confessions. Say it, Jimin whispered so softly only Jungkook could hear. If there's nothing there, say it. It wasn't a challenge, it was a plea. Jungkook felt trapped between two cliffs. On one side, the life he had built with blood and discipline. On the other, the truth that had grown quietly, stubbornly, inside his chest. He imagined sitting anywhere but next to Jimin for the rest of his life. The thought felt like suffocation. The executive cleared his throat. We're waiting. Jungkook stood slowly. The chair scraped against the floor like a warning. You want a statement, he said, voice steady in a way that surprised even him. Fine. They arranged a live press stream within the hour. No edits, no filters, immediate damage control. The camera light blinked red. Jungkook and Jimin sat side by side. Not assigned. Chosen. The symbolism was unavoidable. Jungkook stared into the lens, heart hammering. There's a picture circulating, he began calmly. People are asking what it means. His hand rested on his knee, an inch away from Jimin's. It means, he continued, that I didn't want him to fall. A ripple moved through the press room. And if you're asking whether I care about him, his voice faltered just slightly. I do. The chat feed exploded instantly. Jimin's pulse thundered in his ears. But caring about someone, Jungkook said carefully, doesn't automatically become a scandal. It doesn't erase our team. It doesn't invalidate our work. He turned slightly toward Jimin now, no longer just speaking to the camera. I've never said I love you publicly, he admitted, the words hanging raw and exposed. And maybe I won't, because some things are not for consumption. Jimin's breath caught. But I choose him, Jungkook finished quietly. Not to provoke, not to create rumors. I choose him because he makes me better, because he's been there in every dark room I've walked into. The silence that followed was deafening. The statement wasn't a confession. It wasn't a denial either. It was something far more dangerous, honesty without labels. Backstage afterward, chaos erupted. Phones rang non-stop. Some sponsors pulled back temporarily. Others surprisingly voiced support, praising the sincerity. The group chat buzzed with mixed reactions, supportive messages from members, cautious ones from management. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's wrist once they were finally alone again. "You just detonated the industry," Jimin breathed. Jungkook managed a faint smile. "You wanted honesty." "I didn't mean," Jimin stopped, emotion crashing over him. "You could lose things because of this. I've already lost things pretending." The words settled heavy between them. Jimin's composure finally shattered. "Do you even know what you're risking?" "Yes. And you're okay with that?" Jungkook's gaze softened in a way it rarely did in public. "I'm not okay with losing you." The confession was quiet, not theatrical, not rehearsed. Jimin's eyes filled, tears slipping free before he could stop them. "You're unbelievable." "Probably. You still didn't say it." Jungkook stepped closer until there was no space left between them. "I don't need to," he whispered. Jimin's hand gripped his shirt, not pushing him away this time. "One day," Jimin murmured, voice breaking, "I might need to hear it." Jungkook's forehead rested lightly against his. "Then one day," he replied, "I'll be brave enough." Outside, the world continued to argue, speculate, debate. Hashtags trended, think pieces were written, analysts dissected every syllable. But inside that quiet dressing room, none of it mattered for a fleeting, fragile moment. Because Jungkook stayed. Not because cameras demanded it. Not because rebellion thrilled him. But because when everything threatened to spiral into chaos, when controversy clawed at their doors and reputations trembled on thin ice, he still chose the same place. Beside Jimin. And this time, it wasn't instinct alone. It was decision. The knock on Jungkook's door came at 3:17 a.m., sharp and relentless, like someone trying to break through wood with their bare fists. He was already awake. Sleep had become a stranger since the press stream. His phone lay face down on the nightstand, still vibrating every few minutes with notifications he refused to read. The knocking came again. "Open the door," Jimin's voice called, hoarse and unsteady. Jungkook crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled it open. Jimin stood there barefoot, hoodie thrown over thin sleep clothes, eyes red not from crying, but from fury. "You turned your phone off," Jimin said, pushing past him into the room. "I needed silence." "You don't get silence," Jimin snapped. "Not after that." Jungkook closed the door slowly. "What happened?" Jimin held up his phone, screen shaking in his hand. They released a statement. "Who?" "The board." Jungkook's stomach dropped. Jimin's voice trembled as he read aloud. "While we respect the personal bonds between members, we do not condone behavior that could be misinterpreted as romantic involvement. We are taking internal steps to ensure clearer boundaries moving forward." The words felt like ice water down Jungkook's spine. "Internal steps," he repeated. "They're sending you to Lowe's Angels." The air shifted. "For what?" Jungkook asked, though he already knew. "Solo training, solo promotions, immediately." The silence that followed was suffocating. Jungkook let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "They can't just separate us because of rumors." "They can," Jimin said quietly, "and they are." Anger ignited fast and violent in Jungkook's chest. "So that's it, I tell the truth and they exile me." "You didn't tell the whole truth," Jimin shot back. Jungkook's eyes flashed. "What more do you want from me?" Jimin stepped closer, chest rising and falling rapidly. You stood in front of the world and said you choose me. Do you have any idea what that did? Yes, Jungkook said. It made them uncomfortable. It made me exposed, Jimin's voice cracked. You put something fragile in their hands and called it strength. Jungkook recoiled, as if slapped. You think I did that to hurt you? I think you did it because you're tired of being scared, Jimin said, but you didn't ask if I was ready. The accusation landed heavy and precise. Jungkook's jaw tightened. So what? I'm supposed to apologize for defending us. I never asked you to defend us. Then what do you want? Jungkook demanded. Jimin's hands trembled at his sides. I want to be part of the decision when you light fires. The room went quiet again, but not calm. Are you going? Jimin asked finally. To LA. Yes. Jungkook hesitated. If he refused, it would escalate the conflict with the company. If he went, it would prove their point. That distance was necessary, that proximity was dangerous. They already booked the flight, Jimin continued, voice softer now. 6 hours from now. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, packing. This is punishment. This is strategy, Jimin corrected bitterly. They think space will cool the narrative. And what do you think? Jimin didn't answer immediately. I think, he said slowly, space might show us whether we're choosing each other because we want to or because we're afraid not to. The words sliced deeper than the company's statement. You think I don't want this? Jungkook asked quietly. I think you don't know what this is. That hurt. Jungkook stepped forward until they were inches apart. You said you might need to hear it one day. Yes. And if I say it now? Jimin's breath caught. The air felt electric, fragile. Don't say it because they're pushing you away, Jimin whispered. Don't say it because you're about to lose me. Then when, Jungkook's voice cracked for the first time, when it's safe, when it's convenient, when we're 50 and no one cares anymore. Jimin's eyes shimmered. Say it when you're not trying to prove something. The truth hit like a wave. Was he trying to prove something? To the company, to the world, to himself. Jungkook stepped back, the fight draining out of him. I don't know how to separate love from defiance anymore. The word hung there. Love. Neither of them pretended not to hear it. Jimin closed his eyes briefly. That's the problem. Dawn crept in pale and merciless. They didn't sleep. At the airport, security moved them through private entrances, but cameras still caught glimpses. Headlines updated in real time. Jungkook leaves Korea amid controversy. Jimin stood beside him at the departure gate, hands buried in his hoodie pockets. No dramatic goodbye, Jimin said lightly, though his voice betrayed him. Jungkook studied his face as if memorizing it. You're really not going to stop me. Would you stay if I asked? The question lingered. Jungkook didn't answer. Jimin nodded once, as if that silence told him everything. Then go, he said softly. Go figure out if you're choosing me or choosing rebellion. The boarding call echoed. Jungkook took a step backward. Then another. He wanted to cross the distance and pull Jimin into something undeniable, something that would silence doubt. Instead, he said, I've never sat next to someone out of fear. Jimin's lips trembled into a sad smile. Then prove it. The flight to Los Angeles felt longer than any world tour. Alone in the dim cabin, Jungkook replayed every moment in his head. The blackout, the turbulence, the press stream, the fight at 3 a.m. Had he confused comfort with love? Had he mistaken instinct for inevitability? In LA, the studio was pristine and impersonal. New producers, new dancers, new managers who spoke in polished English about branding opportunities and global appeal. They kept him busy, intense choreography sessions, vocal recordings, meetings about a potential English solo album. Everywhere he sat, there was space beside him. Empty chairs, empty couches, empty van seats. No one reached for him when the lights flickered during rehearsal. No one noticed when his hands shook after reading another wave of commentary dissecting his expression at the airport. He told himself this was growth, independence. But at night, in the silent apartment they had arranged for him, the absence felt louder than any scandal. One evening, after an especially grueling practice, his phone buzzed with a video call. Jimin. Jungkook stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Jimin appeared in soft dorm lighting, hair damp from a shower. He looked smaller somehow. How's LA? Jimin asked. Bright, Jungkook replied, loud. Good. Silence lingered. You look tired, Jungkook said. So do you. They both almost smiled. Did it help? Jimin asked quietly. What? Being away. Jungkook glanced at the empty couch beside him. No, he admitted. Jimin's breath caught softly. It didn't make me less sure, Jungkook continued. It made me realize something. What? That I don't sit next to you because I'm scared of the dark. His voice steadied. I sit next to you because I like the light on your face. Jimin froze. That's not rebellion, Jungkook said. That's not defiance. That's not strategy. His throat tightened. That's love. The word finally landed, unshielded. On the other end of the call, Jimin's eyes filled instantly. You idiot, Jimin whispered, voice breaking. You absolute idiot. Jungkook laughed shakily. I know. You flew across the world to figure that out. I needed to know it wasn't just habit. And it's not. Silence wrapped around them, but this time it felt warm. You don't have to come back fighting, Jimin said softly. You don't have to burn everything down. I'm not, Jungkook replied. I'm coming back choosing you. Not to prove a point, not to make headlines, just because I want to. Jimin wiped at his tears with the back of his hand. You really never do anything halfway. Neither do you. They stayed on the call long after words ran out. Miles apart, oceans between them, and yet the distance felt less threatening than the silence had before. For the first time, Jungkook understood something clearly. He had never said, I love you, because he was afraid the world would steal it. But love wasn't something the world could own unless they handed it over. And when he returned, he wouldn't step beside Jimin to challenge anyone. He would sit next to him quietly. Not because it was safe. Not because it was instinct. But because, finally, he wasn't afraid to call it what it was. The first rumor said Jungkook wasn't coming back. It spread at 2:12 a.m. Seoul time, crawling across forums and news feeds with alarming speed. Anonymous insider sources claimed his LA project would become permanent, that the company was preparing a gradual separation, that the distance experiment had worked. Jimin read it alone in the dark. His phone screen illuminated his face in cold blue light, and for a brief, horrifying second, he believed it. He didn't call. He didn't text. Instead, he threw the phone onto the bed and pressed his palms against his eyes until colors burst behind them. He had told Jungkook to go figure himself out. He had demanded clarity. He hadn't expected the world to try to rewrite the ending before they even reached it. Across the ocean, Jungkook was mid-rehearsal when his manager's expression shifted from routine irritation to something sharper. We need to stop, the manager said abruptly. The music cut. Sweat dripped down Jungkook's spine as he caught his breath. What now? The manager hesitated. There's speculation you're negotiating independently. Jungkook blinked. What? They think you're planning to leave. A humorless laugh escaped him. Based on what? Based on you not denying it. Jungkook grabbed his phone from the floor, scrolling rapidly, headlines multiplied by the minute. Some framed him as ambitious, others painted him as selfish. A few accused him of abandoning the group to escape controversy. And woven through it all were familiar undertones. Maybe the distance wasn't about strategy, maybe it was about fallout. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Book me a flight. To where? Home. Back in Seoul, the dorm was quieter than usual. The others were careful around Jimin, as if sudden movements might shatter him. He hated that. I'm fine, he insisted for the third time that evening. You look like you haven't slept, one of them muttered. Jimin shrugged, neither have you. But when he retreated to his room, the silence felt heavier than before. The bed beside the wall where Jungkook used to collapse after late practices felt like a ghost space. He lay down and stared at the ceiling. He had asked for honesty. He had asked Jungkook to separate love from defiance. He hadn't prepared himself for what loving someone publicly unstable might cost. The doorbell rang the next afternoon. Jimin froze mid-step in the kitchen. No one was expecting deliveries. One of the members moved toward the door cautiously, peering through the camera screen. His eyebrows shot up. You might want to see this. Jimin's pulse spiked. When the door opened, Jungkook stood there with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and exhaustion carved into his features. For a moment, no one spoke. You weren't supposed to land until tonight, Jimin said finally, voice barely steady. I didn't wait for the connection, Jungkook replied. The others exchanged glances and quietly retreated, leaving the two of them standing in the doorway like unfinished sentences. You saw it, Jimin said. Yeah. And Jungkook stepped inside, setting his bag down deliberately, and I realized I'm tired of letting other people narrate my life. The air shifted instantly. Don't, Jimin warned softly, don't turn this into another battlefield. I'm not, Jungkook said, I'm ending one. Jimin crossed his arms. By what? Marching into a press room again. By not running. The tension sparked. You think staying fixes it? Jimin challenged. You think defiance equals stability. I'm not defying anyone, Jungkook shot back. I'm choosing where I belong. And where is that? Jimin demanded. Jungkook stepped closer, eyes blazing. Here. The word reverberated. With the group, Jimin pressed. With you. Silence detonated between them. You can't keep saying that like it's simple, Jimin said, voice rising. It's not just you and me in a vacuum. It's contracts. It's years of work. It's people who depend on us. I know that, Jungkook snapped. Do you think I do? Then act like it. The shout echoed down the hallway. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling over. I flew across the world to figure out if I love you or if I'm just clinging to comfort. I stood alone in rooms where no one knew me as anything but a brand. I felt what it's like to sit without you next to me. And I hated it, Jungkook said bluntly. Jimin's composure cracked for a fraction of a second. But hatting distance doesn't automatically mean we're ready for what closeness costs, Jimin whispered. The honesty in his voice disarmed Jungkook more than anger ever could. You think I don't see what this is doing to you? Jimin continued. Every article, every panel discussion dissecting your expression. They're not attacking me anymore, they're attacking you. I can handle it. You shouldn't have to. The vulnerability in those words hit hard. Jungkook stepped forward until there was barely space between them. I don't need you to protect me from consequences. I'm not protecting you, Jimin shot back. I'm protecting us. The word lingered. Us. Footsteps approached from the hallway. Their manager appeared, face grim. We need to talk. Of course they did. The conference room felt colder this time. You returning early complicates things, the executive began. Good, Jungkook replied. Jimin shot him a warning glance. We were preparing a phased narrative, the executive continued. Your sudden arrival suggests instability. I am not unstable, Jungkook said evenly. You are unpredictable. And that's a problem. It is when shareholders panic. Jimin leaned forward. What exactly are you suggesting? The executive folded his hands, a temporary hiatus for Jungkook. The words fell like a blade. The room went silent. A hiatus, Jungkook repeated slowly. To allow public sentiment to settle. You mean to let them think I did something wrong, Jungkook said. You mean to protect the brand, the executive corrected. Jimin's chair scraped against the floor as he stood abruptly. You can't just sideline him because he told the truth. We can, the executive replied calmly, and if necessary, we will. Jungkook felt something inside him snap, not explosively, but decisively. You want me to disappear? He asked. For a while. He glanced at Jimin. Jimin's eyes were wide, furious, terrified. If I agree, Jungkook said slowly, what happens? You rest, reflect, re-enter later with a controlled narrative. And if I do? The executive's gaze hardened. Then we reassess your position here. The threat was unmistakable now. Outside the glass walls of the room, staff moved as if nothing seismic was unfolding inside. Jimin's voice trembled despite his effort to steady it. This is coercion. This is business. Jungkook stood. Fine, he said. Jimin's head snapped toward him. What are you doing? I'll take the hiatus. The executive nodded, satisfied. But not because I'm ashamed, Jungkook continued, and not because I regret what I said. The air tightened. I'm stepping back because I choose to, he finished, not because you're forcing me. Back at the dorm, Jimin paced. You can't just agree to vanish, he argued. That's exactly what they want. It's not vanishing, Jungkook said quietly, it's pausing. And what am I supposed to do while you pause? Jungkook hesitated. That was the part he hadn't fully confronted. You keep going, he said softly. Jimin laughed bitterly, without you next to me. Jungkook stepped closer. You don't need me next to you to stand. That's not the point. Then what is? Jimin's voice broke. The point is I don't want to win stages if you're not there to roll your eyes at me afterward. The confession hung fragile and exposed. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. I'm not leaving you, he said. It feels like it. He reached out, gripping Jimin's shoulders firmly. Listen to me, a hiatus isn't distance. It's space to breathe without cameras analyzing the oxygen between us. And what if, when you come back, everything's different, Jimin whispered. Then we adapt. And if we do? Jungkook leaned his forehead against Jimin, just like he had before leaving for LA. Then at least we'll know we chose each other without pressure, he murmured. Jimin's hands fisted into Jungkook's shirt. You're asking me to trust you again. I am. Silence wrapped around them, heavy but not hostile. Finally, Jimin nodded once. Don't disappear, he said softly. I won't. The announcement broke the internet within the hour. Jungkook announces temporary hiatus for reflection. Speculation surged. Sympathy trended alongside criticism. Analysts debated whether it was damage control or silent rebellion. But in the dorm that night, none of that noise mattered. They sat on the floor of Jungkook's room, backs against the bed, shoulders touching. No cameras. No executives. No statements. Are you scared? Jimin asked quietly. Yes, Jungkook admitted. Of what? Of who I am without the stage. Jimin's hand slid closer, fingers brushing lightly against Jungkook. "You're still you," Jimin said, "even if you're not under lights." Jungkook turned slightly, studying his profile in the dim glow. "I love you," he said. This time there was no audience, no strategy, no defiance. Just truth. Jimin's breath caught sharply. "Say it again," he whispered. "I love you." The world outside was chaotic and loud and hungry for spectacle. But in that small, quiet room, with the city humming beyond the window, Jungkook didn't choose the seat next to Jimin out of fear. He chose it because it was where he wanted to be. And for the first time, he didn't care who was watching. The first week of Jungkook's hiatus felt like standing in the eye of a storm that refused to move on. The world outside roared relentlessly. News panels debated his emotional instability. Comment sections fractured into war zones. Some praised his honesty. Others accused him of manipulating sentiment to protect a secret relationship. Inside the dorm, however, everything felt deceptively quiet. Too quiet. Jungkook woke up at 6 a.m. out of habit, his body still trained to run toward practice rooms and vocal warm-ups. Instead, he stared at the ceiling and listened to the hum of distant traffic. No schedule, no staff knocking, no makeup calls. The absence was suffocating. Jimin found him sitting on the kitchen floor that morning, back against the cabinet, coffee untouched beside him. "You look like someone stole your oxygen," Jimin muttered, leaning against the counter. "Maybe they did," Jungkook replied. Jimin studied him carefully. "You said you wanted space." "I said I'd take it," Jungkook corrected. "And now?" Jungkook ran a hand over his face. "Now I feel useless." The word hung heavy. Jimin crouched down in front of him. "You are not your schedule." "Tell that to my brain." Silence lingered before Jimin spoke again, softer this time. "You know they're saying this hiatus is code for something bigger." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "I know. They think you're preparing to go solo permanently." "I'm not. They think I pushed you into a corner." "That's ridiculous. They think we're going to announce something dramatic." Jungkook finally looked up. "Are we?" The question startled both of them. Jimin's breath hitched slightly. "Is that what you want?" Jungkook didn't answer immediately. He thought about the night he had finally said the words, about how small and sacred the room had felt, how unfiltered it had been. "I don't want our first real moment to become a press release," he said quietly. Jimin's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. "Good. But I also don't want to hide like it's shameful." The honesty in that sentence ignited tension again. "You think I'm hiding?" Jimin asked. "I think you're scared," Jungkook replied. "And you're not." "I am," Jungkook admitted, "but I'm more scared of losing you than losing endorsements." Jimin flinched at the bluntness. "It's not that simple." "It never is with you." The slight edge in Jungkook's voice made Jimin's expression harden. "What does that mean?" "It means you overthink everything until it suffocates." "And you leap before looking," Jimin shot back. "You throw words into the world and expect me to land safely on them." The temperature in the room spiked. Jungkook stood abruptly. "I didn't force you to say anything." "You didn't have to," Jimin exclaimed. "You stood in front of millions and implied everything. Do you know how that felt? Like the ground disappeared under me and everyone was watching to see if I'd fall." Jungkook's voice dropped dangerously low. "So what would you have preferred, that I deny loving you?" The air froze. Jimin swallowed. "I would have preferred we decide together how to exist." Jungkook stared at him, chest heaving. "I thought choosing you publicly was proof." "It was," Jimin whispered, "but it was also terrifying." Their phones buzzed almost simultaneously. Both of them ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again. And again. Jungkook grabbed his phone this time, dread already crawling under his skin. A new headline dominated every feed. Dispatch releases private photos. His stomach dropped. Jimin's hand trembled as he opened the article. The photos were grainy but unmistakable. Late-night walks. Jungkook's hand brushing Jimin's hair out of his face outside a studio months ago. A moment on a balcony where their foreheads had nearly touched. Intimate but not explicit. Contextless. Weaponized. They were following us, Jimin whispered. Jungkook felt rage ignite, sharp and blinding. How long? Does it matter? Jimin's voice cracked. They've been waiting. Within minutes, their manager was calling. Emergency meeting. Immediate response required. The conference room felt like déjà vu, only worse. This changes things, the executive said, placing printed copies of the photos on the table like evidence in a trial. Jungkook didn't sit. Say what you're thinking, he challenged. The executive's gaze flicked between them. The narrative will no longer stay ambiguous. You either deny romantic involvement clearly or you confirm it and accept the consequences. And those consequences are, Jimin asked quietly. Contract renegotiations, potential sponsor withdrawals, possible market restrictions. Jungkook laughed harshly. For loving someone. For altering your public identity in a conservative industry. Jimin's fingers dug into his palms under the table. You want a denial, Jungkook said flatly. We want stability. You want control. We want longevity. The words collided like blades. Jimin finally spoke. If we confirm it, what happens to the group? The executive hesitated. It will create turbulence. That's not an answer. It could divide the fanbase. Jungkook leaned forward, eyes blazing. Or it could show them we're human. This is not a social experiment, the executive replied coldly. It's a corporation. Silence thickened again. Jimin turned to Jungkook. Look at me. Jungkook did. This isn't just about us, Jimin said. It's about everyone tied to this. I know. Then don't make this decision from anger. I'm not angry. You're furious. He wasn't wrong. Jungkook exhaled slowly, trying to steady himself. If we deny it, we're lying. If we confirm it, we're detonating everything. The weight of it pressed down on both of them. What do you want? Jungkook asked Jimin, voice softer now. The question was no longer about rebellion or pride. It was about survival. Jimin's eyes shimmered. I want to love you without watching for cameras in every reflection. And if that means the world sees it. Jimin's breath trembled. Then I want to choose that together. The executive cleared his throat impatiently. We need an answer. Jungkook looked at Jimin one more time. No stage lights, no scripted interviews. Just truth. I won't deny loving him, Jungkook said finally. The room went silent. Jimin's heart slammed against his ribs. I won't hold a press conference either, Jungkook continued. You don't get a spectacle. The executive's face tightened. Then what? Jimin inhaled shakily. We say nothing, he said. All eyes turned to him. We let the photos exist, Jimin continued. We don't label, we don't dramatize, we don't deny, we don't confirm, we live. That's not strategy, the executive snapped. It's sanity, Jimin replied calmly. The room buzzed with tension. Finally, the executive leaned back. You understand this may cost you. Jungkook didn't hesitate. Everything worth having does. Back at the dorm, the atmosphere felt electric and fragile. You're sure? Jungkook asked quietly once they were alone. No, Jimin admitted, but I'm done letting fear dictate how I breathe. Jungkook stepped closer. They're going to keep watching. Let them. They'll twist every glance. Then let them see we're not ashamed. Jungkook reached out, fingers brushing Jimin's cheek gently. you're shaking. So are you. They stood like that for a long moment, aware of the storm building outside, but refusing to run from it. I don't regret saying it, Jungkook whispered. Neither do I, Jimin replied. The next day, the company released a short, sterile statement. We do not comment on artists' private lives. No denial. No confirmation. The internet erupted. Some called it cowardly, others called it revolutionary. But in the dorm, Jungkook sat beside Jimin on the couch as the world argued. No cameras. No choreography. Just proximity. You know, Jimin said softly, you still never said it in front of anyone else. Jungkook smirked faintly, I don't need an audience. Jimin leaned his head against Jungkook's shoulder, exhaustion finally settling in. Do you think this will ever calm down? Jimin murmured. Probably not. Does that scare you? Yes. Jimin's hand slid into Jungkook, fingers intertwining naturally. But I'm not choosing you because it's safe, Jungkook said quietly. I'm choosing you because it's real. Outside, headlines burned and debates raged. Inside, for once, they weren't reacting. They were simply sitting next to each other. Not as defiance, not as performance, but as two people who had decided that love, however complicated and controversial, was still worth the noise. The protest trucks arrived at dawn. Jimin heard them before he saw them, the low rumble of engines idling outside the company building, followed by the metallic screech of speakers being tested at full volume. He was halfway through tying his shoelaces when the first chant blasted through the window. Protect the group, remove the distraction. His hands froze. Across the room, Jungkook slowly lowered his phone from where he'd been scrolling silently through the news. He didn't have to ask what it meant. The hashtags had already been trending since midnight. Protect the group. Jungkook stepped down. Jimin, manipulator. The words had grown teeth overnight. Jimin forced himself to stand. We should go, he said quietly. To the company, Jungkook asked. Yes. Why? Because hiding in here while they scream outside makes it look like we're guilty of something. Jungkook's jaw tightened. You're not going out there. They're not going to storm the lobby. You don't know that. Jimin stepped closer, eyes steady despite the tremor in his fingers. If I start being afraid of every angry voice, I'll never leave this room again. The drive to the building felt surreal. Protest trucks lined the street, LED screens flashing edited clips of moments taken wildly out of context. Slow-motion footage of Jungkook looking at Jimin on stage, cropped photos of their hands too close together. Dramatic music layered underneath like a villain origin story. The speakers roared accusations. They betrayed the fans. They lied. This is selfish. Jungkook's hand tightened around the strap of his bag until his knuckles turned white. Jimin glanced at him. Don't look at them. I'm not. You are. The car slowed as security cleared a path. For a split second, Jungkook made eye contact with one of the protesters holding a sign that read Remove HIM. Not remove them. Remove him. The message was clear. Inside the building, chaos buzzed like exposed wires. Emergency meetings, PR teams scrambling, security doubling shifts. The executive, who had once spoken calmly, now looked exhausted. This is escalating faster than anticipated, he admitted. No, Jungkook replied flatly, it's escalating exactly as anticipated. The executive didn't argue. They're demanding a statement, he continued. Some major fan unions are threatening to boycott upcoming releases. And sponsors, Jimin asked quietly. Two have paused campaigns. The words hit like falling bricks. Jungkook leaned forward, palms flat on the table. You said saying nothing would stabilize things. We hoped it would. It didn't. Silence followed. The executive's gaze flickered between them. There is one option left. Jimin's stomach twisted. What option? Public clarification. Jungkook's eyes hardened. You already asked for denial. Not denial, the executive corrected carefully. Reframing. Define reframing, Jimin said. You emphasize brotherhood, emotional closeness, artistic reliance. You explicitly state there is no romantic involvement. The room went still. Jungkook laughed, low and incredulous. So we lie with prettier words. You protect the group. Jimin stared at the table, heartbeat pounding in his ears. He could feel the weight of thousands of expectations pressing down on him. If we do this, he asked slowly, will the trucks leave? Eventually. And the sponsors? They will likely resume. Jungkook turned to him sharply. You're not considering this. Jimin didn't look up. I'm considering everyone. Everyone except us. That's not fair, Jimin snapped, finally meeting his gaze. You think I don't care about us? I care so much it's tearing me apart. Then don't give them what they want. And what do you want? Jimin shot back. To let this burn until there's nothing left. The argument ignited instantly. I want us to stop apologizing for existing, Jungkook said. This isn't about apology, it's about survival. Whose survival? The group. And what about mine? Jungkook demanded. What about yours? Jimin's voice cracked. I'm willing to swallow something if it means we all keep standing. Jungkook stared at him like he'd been struck. You deny us? He asked quietly. Jimin's silence was answer enough. The executive cleared his throat, uncomfortable but resolute. We need a decision within the hour. The room emptied, leaving them alone. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Jungkook said, look at me. Jimin didn't. Look at me. Slowly, he did. If you stand in front of cameras and call this brotherhood, Jungkook said, voice dangerously calm, I will stand next to you and let you. Jimin's breath caught. But something in me will break. The honesty in that sentence was unbearable. Jimin stepped closer, and if we don't do it, something in the group might break. You're asking me to erase what we said to each other. I'm asking you to protect the people who trusted us. The tension between love and loyalty felt like a knife pressed against both their throats. Jungkook's eyes shimmered, not with weakness, but with fury barely restrained. You think they'll stop after this? You think once we say brothers, they'll suddenly respect boundaries? No, Jimin whispered, but they might calm down. And if they do, then at least we tried. The word tried felt hollow. Jungkook stepped back, running a hand through his hair. You're willing to rewrite us for them. I'm willing to bend so we don't snap. The door opened. Time was up. The press conference was set up in record time. Cameras, flashing lights, rows of reporters pretending neutrality. Jungkook and Jimin walked out side by side. The irony was almost cruel. They sat down. Jimin felt like his lungs were filled with sand. The first question came sharp and direct. Are you in a romantic relationship with each other? The room held its breath. Jimin's fingers curled into his palms under the table. He thought about the night Jungkook said I love you without hesitation, about the quiet cooch, about the way safety felt when their shoulders touched. He opened his mouth. Jungkook's hand moved under the table, gripping his wrist firmly. Not stopping him, just grounding him. Jimin inhaled. We care about each other deeply, he began carefully. We've grown up together, we rely on each other. The room leaned forward. But he continued, voice steadier now, we are not here to define our private lives for public consumption. A ripple moved through the reporters. Jungkook spoke next, voice calm but unyielding. Speculation doesn't change the work we've built. It doesn't change our commitment to the group. He paused. And it doesn't give anyone ownership over our personal boundaries. It wasn't a denial. It wasn't a confirmation. It was a wall. Questions grew more aggressive. Are you saying the photos were misinterpreted? Is this affecting internal dynamics? Have sponsors pressured you? Jimin felt sweat gather at his collarbone, but his voice never wavered again. We are still standing together, he said simply. Afterward, the response was explosive but divided. Some fans felt reassured, others felt defied. The protest trucks didn't disappear immediately, but they grew quieter. That night, back in the dorm, the adrenaline finally crashed. Jimin sat on the edge of his bed, staring at nothing. You almost said it. Jungkook murmured from the doorway. Jimin didn't deny it. I almost erased us. You didn't. I thought about it. Jungkook crossed the room slowly. Why? Because I'm terrified of being the reason everything falls apart. Jungkook knelt in front of him. You are not a catastrophe. Tell that to the trucks outside. I don't care about the trucks. I do, Jimin whispered. I care because I don't want them to hate you. Jungkook's expression softened. They don't know me, he said. You do. Jimin's composure finally cracked. I don't want you to lose your dream because of me. Jungkook's hands cupped his face gently. You are not the reason I'm in danger. Fear is. Tears slipped down Jimin's cheeks. If this destroys us, he began. It won't, Jungkook interrupted firmly. You can't promise that. No, Jungkook admitted, but I can promise I won't let you carry the blame alone. Silence wrapped around them, heavy but intimate. Outside, the city buzzed with controversy and debate. Inside, Jungkook leaned his forehead against Jimin's. I would sit next to you in every burning room, he whispered. Jimin let out a shaky laugh through tears, even if the fire is my fault. Especially then. The world still demanded definitions. But for now, they had drawn a line. Not denial. Not confession. Just a refusal to let love become a weapon. And even with protest trucks idling outside and headlines screaming for clarity, Jungkook still chose the seat beside Jimin. Not because it was easy, but because walking away would have been far worse. The final concert of the tour was not announced as historic. No headlines predicted it would become a turning point. No dramatic trailers hinted at revelation. It was simply another date on a schedule that had survived storms, boycotts, rumors, and fragile truces. But the air backstage felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Jimin stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his in-ear monitor with steady hands that didn't quite match the storm in his chest. The protest trucks were gone now. The sponsors had cautiously returned. The fandom had settled into a tense, watchful balance. Nothing had fully healed. But nothing had fully broken either. Behind him, Jungkook sat on the couch, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the floor like he was memorizing the pattern. You're quiet, Jimin said softly. So are you. Jimin turned around. Are you scared? Jungkook looked up slowly. Yes. Of what? That one day you'll decide this is too heavy. Jimin's expression shifted, pain flickering through it. You think I haven't already asked myself that? Silence settled between them. I almost let them rewrite us, Jimin admitted. I almost said the words they wanted. I know. I was ready to call it brotherhood. Jungkook stood then, crossing the small space between them. But you didn't, he said gently. Because when I imagined sitting next to you after that, it felt like I'd be lying to myself. The confession landed softly, but it carried weight. Jungkook reached for his hand without hesitation. We don't owe anyone a version of us that makes them comfortable. Jimin's grip tightened. We also don't owe them destruction. I'm not trying to destroy anything. I know, Jimin exhaled slowly. You're trying to survive it. The stage manager called their names. The lights dimmed. The roar of the crowd rose like a tidal wave beyond the curtains. They walked out side by side. Not deliberately choreographed, not strategically placed. Just naturally aligned. The performance was electric. Years of discipline and shared history flowed through every note, every step. There was no hesitation in their movements, no visible strain. If anything, there was a new steadiness, something quieter but stronger. During the final ment, the members stood in a loose line, sweat-soaked and glowing under gold lights. When it was Jungkook's turn to speak, he didn't search for poetic words. He didn't glance at managers. He didn't look at the cameras first. He looked at Jimin. The crowd noticed, they always did. There were moments this year, Jungkook began, voice steady but honest, when I thought about stepping away from everything. A ripple moved through the arena. I thought about whether I could carry the noise, the expectations, the misunderstandings. He paused, inhaling slowly. And I realized something. The stadium was silent now. I've never been afraid of the dark, he said. I've just always known where I feel safest when it comes. He didn't reach for Jimin. He didn't need to. I'm grateful, he continued, for the people who sit beside me when things get loud. The statement was simple. No labels. No declarations. But it was enough. When Jimin's turn came, his voice trembled just slightly. I used to think strength meant protecting everyone from storms, he said. Now I think it means standing in them without pretending they aren't there. His gaze found Jungkook. And choosing who stands with you. The applause was thunderous, but not chaotic. Not divided. It wasn't unanimous acceptance. It wasn't universal approval. But it wasn't hatred either. It was something more complicated and more human. Understanding without entitlement. Backstage afterward, there were no dramatic embraces. No whispered confessions. Just exhaustion and relief woven together. In the quiet hallway leading to the dressing rooms, Jungkook slowed his steps. Jimin matched them automatically. Did we survive? Jimin asked softly. Jungkook considered it. Yes, he said, but not because we fought everyone. Then why? Because we stopped fighting each other. The words lingered. For the first time in months, the building felt calm. No emergency meetings. No urgent statements. No trucks outside. Just the hum of cooling stage lights and distant laughter from the staff. In the dressing room, there were multiple chairs. Unassigned. Unmarked. Jungkook didn't hesitate. He walked to one. And sat down. Jimin glanced at the empty space beside him. He could have chosen another seat. He could have made a point about independence or optics. Instead, he crossed the room and lowered himself into the chair next to Jungkook. Their shoulders touched lightly. Not possessive. Not defiant. Just there. Jungkook exhaled slowly. I never said it when the world was watching. Jimin smiled faintly. You didn't have to. I know. Silence settled comfortably between them. Outside, the industry would continue to speculate. Articles would still be written. People would still argue about definitions and boundaries and meaning. But inside that small, ordinary room, there was no need for grand gestures. No need for public proof. Jungkook never built his love out of declarations. He built it out of choices. In every van, every waiting room, every storm, He chose the seat beside Jimin. And in the end, that was louder than any confession. The world could debate what it wanted to call them. But when the lights went out, when the noise faded, when the headlines moved on to something else, they would still find themselves in rooms filled with empty chairs. And Jungkook would still sit down, right next to Jimin, as if the world was only ever safe there.